Good evening, good folks. We're here for our Monday, May 9th, 2022 work session of the City of Muskegon City Commission. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gorman?
Here.
Commissioner Emery? Absent. Commissioner St. Clair?
Here.
Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Hood?
Here.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Here.
Vice Mayor German?
Here.
Thank you. As a reminder, if you wish to give public comment, public comment is reserved at the end of the meeting at our work sessions, but there are forms in the back of the room that you can fill out and submit to our city clerk. All right, first item on the work session is Escribe Meeting Manager Software Demo. I believe our city clerk, Amish, will be reporting out on this item. And we got someone joining us virtually as well.
Yeah, just 1 second here. There we go. So we have, can you hear me, Blair? Oh, I can't hear you though. Wait a minute. Just a second.
Testing.
Oh, now I can hear you. There we go.
Yes,
we're good.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes. I'm going to take this off so you can hear me better. But this is Blair from Escribe. So the city clerk's office has been studying a lot of different software to try to get our packet management for the agenda working more efficiently. And, so it's going to provide us a lot more opportunity to the staff to actually input their own items and different things. I don't want to take all the thunder away though from Blair. So, but we did study several of them, and when it was all said and done, we worked with IT, and the clerk's office and IT both thought that eScribe would be the best solution for us. And I've asked him to Blair to just give us a presentation and a little bit and kind of explain it to everybody.
Sure, absolutely. Am I able to share my screen? I've enabled screen sharing.
And, oops. Hold on. Thank you. Well, give me a minute here.
Sure.
Not sure. Mike. Go to participants. Thank you.
Click on the participants.
Do you want me to sing a song or something?
Some more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Blair, you should have it now.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, start sharing my screen. Here we go. Perfect. Okay, well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable commissioners, Madam Clerk, and everybody else in attendance. Thank you very much for inviting me to present this evening. My name is Blair McDonald. I'm one of the territory sales managers here at Escribe, and over the next 15 minutes or so, I'll be sharing a little bit about who and what Escribe is, who we are, what we do, a bit of a mini demo. Talk about a few technical points, our approach to implementation, why Escribe, and if we have time for Q&A, if you want, I'm happy to answer a few questions. So I'm going to go through things pretty fast. I'll provide a copy of the slide deck. I'll send it to the clerk afterwards. So Escribe has been around since 2003, almost 20 years now, with a headquarter here in Markham, Ontario, which is in the Greater Toronto area. We're owned by Onboard Passageways. They're based in Indianapolis, currently almost over 55 staff now. Actually, we're just in the midst of hiring a few people to round out a few parts of our team. Over 3,800 customers worldwide. Almost 10% of those are in the public sector. We have a strong background in public sector consulting. With a very strong track record, or a pedigree is really helping organizations implement efficiencies through technology. We have a very strong knowledge of local government, in local jurisdictions, numerous jurisdictions. People do things differently depending on what geography you're in. And we are investing a few $1 million in our technology stack this year alone. So essentially, what is Escribe? It's meeting automation. So it's not just agendas and minutes, but automating the complete meeting lifecycle. We're a Microsoft Silver partner, so we're aligned with the Microsoft technology stack, so seamlessly integrating into all of your Office productivity suite, so Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, your web browser, all of the major records management tools out there, with a keen focus on accessibility, so helping ensure that we're doing our part to support our customers in how they make meetings more inclusive and reduce barriers to consumption of digital content by those who might be blind or deaf. It's commercial off-the-shelf software, highly configurable. We don't do customization, but it's highly configurable, and it's built in a way that it's going to support meetings no matter what jurisdiction you're in, whether it's a combination of Robert's rules or Jeffersonian rules or whatever it might be according to your parliamentary procedure. It's a turnkey solution, so we set it up, we train you, and you're off to the races. So it's meeting and agenda management, live streaming video, electronic voting if you want that at some point, special access for elected officials, council, commission access, and publishing integration so that you publish with a few clicks right from the tool, right from Escribe directly to your public-facing website. So essentially what we do is we bring the who, what, when, where details, the meeting profile, the meeting itself, the agenda, the style, the processes, the parliamentary procedures, along with who goes to the meeting, so what's their role, what's their function, how do they participate, and we bring it all together, supporting it with a 6-step business process, starting with the logistics, getting everybody on the same page, making sure it's in everybody's calendars, they know where they're going, when it's at, and they've got access to their agenda materials. We're providing staff with the ability to pull together the agendas, curate all the items, and staff can submit all of their items on their own, collaborate on them in real time in parallel, so multiple people could be working on the same content, no matter where they are or what device they're on. So real time, parallel editing and collaboration, and getting that all put together with configurable workflows so everybody can have their chance to view and approve material and make sure it gets into the agenda in a timely manner. Meeting day rolls around, and there's all kinds of great functionality to support you from roll call to adjournment and everything in between. So capturing your minutes, movers, seconders, vote results, whether it's simple majority or you need to change the vote threshold because maybe you're changing an ordinance or a bylaw. Weighted voting, election style voting, runoff voting, multiple choice, roll call, of course, and then if you're capturing conflict of interest or going in and out of closed session, making sure that those materials are sensitive, that might be sensitive, that they're safe and secure. And if you're live streaming, it's auto timestamping so that once the video and the minutes are published together, it's all linked. So click on an item and it jumps to that timestamp. After your meeting, your procedural minutes are done. So this is going to drastically reduce the amount of time it is going to take for the clerk's office to prepare and publish minutes. If you add more narrative components, obviously you'll spend a little bit more time doing that. But now that you're linking the agendas and minutes to the recorded video with timestamps, there's not going to be such a heavy reliance or heavy need to produce verbatim or narrative minutes. We're seeing a drastic decline in cities that have done verbatim or narrative minutes. Now they're not so much because they're linking the agendas and the minutes right to the video directly. Capturing your action items, so anything that gets assigned in a commission meeting. So now it's we're approving the purchase, go sign some paperwork or go get 3 quotes. Those tasks for follow-up or action items can be then assigned to other individuals, other staff in the city, and then followed up on, and you can report on that as well. And publishing and archiving, making sure that everything is getting published to your website in HTML and PDF format. And HTML is much friendlier when it comes to ADA compliance, but certainly making it easy for people to go online, your residents, do keyword searches, look up materials, watch videos, and later on down the road, if you want to have electronic speaker sign up and public comments on agenda items, those can be integrated as well. So that's how we support it. And then depending on the roles, administrators, those are folks in the city manager's office, the clerk's office that kind of curate and control everything. The participants are yourselves, the elected officials, contributors, other staff that are going to be submitting content or approving content, as well as maybe carrying out some of the action items, and members of the public, folks that are going to go to your website and consume that content. So I'm going to jump into a little bit of a mini demonstration now, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, so bear with me. I've got multiple windows and multiple tabs open, but hopefully this will all make sense. So right now I'm logged in as an administrator. I'm just going to minimize my little Zoom window here. There we go, so that it's not distracting me. So what you're seeing here is what the clerks and the city manager would see when they log in. The Escribe logo, we'd put the city logo or the city seal there, and I know staff and elected officials really take pride in seeing something that's branded for them. They're going to know that this is their platform for how they manage meetings. The menu bar gets you into any module in the platform from anywhere, no matter what screen you're on, so that's saves a lot of time. The documents dashboard, this is all of the pertinent, this is what you're working on right now. So items that are either in draft or approval in progress or just approved, or like you see here under the status, these are all the items that are added. And this dashboard is really helpful because you can parse it down by meeting type and meeting date, as well as where it's at. So if you wanted to just look at, maybe you're having a finance meeting around budget season, so you pick maybe it's the audit committee or the finance committee, and you want to just look at all of the items coming in from Parks and Rec because there's a bunch of grant money that's available and you want to make sure that everything makes it in there. And then you just want to make sure that everything gets in there. So let's look at all of the items coming from Parks and Rec for that finance meeting that are just in either draft mode or approval in progress, because we want to make sure that there's no bottlenecks or gum in the gears. And so we know those are the ones we need to focus on. So great dashboard. Below that is just a parking lot. It's labeled agenda items, but this is for items that get referred. So if commissioners want to refer items to an agenda, just suggest the topic. Or if it's an item that you've deferred, you've discussed it, you want to table it, not sure what meeting to put it on next, you can do that as well. And live during the meeting, you can mark items for referral or deferral so that after the meeting you can either park them or assign them to a different meeting type. So that first reading now goes to a second and a third reading, or an item that commissioners discuss now goes to another workshop or goes to committee. Then committee meets and discusses it and then sends it back to the commission. So that's really easy for keeping track and managing your legislative items. All the meetings here on the right hand side, again, you can parse by meeting type, the status, and the date range. So you can just parse it down by what you want to look at. Okay. Now I've just jumped over to another tab here. These are all the documents that staff are going to be working on. So when I log in as a contributor role, my department heads, my department head staff, they're going to work on content together. Really simple. They're going to actually just do a quick refresh here. Oops, this isn't the screen I wanted. It's going to report manager here. There we go. And if I want to add an item, very quickly, so if I want to submit an item, it's all a series of drop-down menus. So you can set up as many different meeting types and agenda item templates that you want. So you would just say, I want to draft an item for the city council meeting on the 17th. It's going to go under whatever category, so now the clerk doesn't have to read every single agenda item to know, oh, that's going to go in this category and that's going to go in that category. Now the staff can put them there. That's literally saving some clerks a couple of hours every week just so that they don't have to, ascertain just from reading a cover page or flipping through a few pages where it should go on the agenda. And then they say what department they're from. The department they select is going to indicate what templates they have access to. And then when they're ready to create it, it's going to open up in Microsoft Word. So it's a very familiar tool for most people. And the document can be structured like a fillable form so that all these fields can be set up where they can, add all that information. And certain fields are going to have extractable data. So the agenda item title, Escribe will read that and pull that into the agenda on the agenda cover. Same with the description and any recommendations. So what the staff member types in there is going to automatically get pulled into the agenda instead of reading it or cutting and pasting it or transcribing it from the report cover page or the agenda item memo onto the agenda. So that is going to save a massive amount of time. And again, I mentioned earlier, parallel editing, so you'll see my name up here in the top right corner. We could have multiple people signed into this document, and we could be working on it together. I could be at my place, you could be in your office or at your home, and we could all be collaborating on it together. So that's super handy when it's 3 o'clock on a Friday, you're up against the 5 o'clock deadline, and there's still a few people that need to add their contribution to that document. We've got workflows so that you can approve the document, create a full-on version history so you can track who edited and when, your approval history so you can see when documents were approved and timed when they hit somebody's inbox, when it was approved. So you've got good control, a good audit paper trail to track all of that stuff. Okay, I've jumped onto another tab here, and I'm going to actually start conducting this particular meeting. So now you can actually use this platform, not just to create agendas in your minutes, but also you're going to be able to use this to conduct your meeting. So being able to capture your minutes, live stream, control your live stream. So the city is using YouTube, so now you'll be able to link your YouTube videos to your agendas and minutes. And so do a quick roll call here because I can't conduct a meeting without a proper quorum. So it timestamps everybody's arrival and make sure helps you ensure that you've got quorum. I'm going to jump right down to this particular item here, okay? And I'm going to do a couple of things. So I'm going to activate a speaker queue, and we can either, the clerk or the mayor can either add somebody to the queue and they want to speak. And I have a public display here, so this person raises their hand, and the mayor would recognize them as having the floor. And you could have your timer up on your display screens in your meeting room. And now Steve has the floor, and the timer is counting down. And instead of the Escribe logo, that would be the city logo or the city seal or a coat of arms or whatever you want to display there. Elected officials are going to be able to use their app, their Escribe meeting app, to not only view the details of agenda items, but they're also going to always make sure that they can catch up or stay on the current item. So whatever item is on the floor, that's the item that they are on. If they want to submit a request to speak, this is super handy for virtual and hybrid meetings. I could, as one of the elected, if it was one of the commissioners, I could say I have a request to speak, and then the mayor and the clerk would see other people who want to speak, and then if Steve yields his time, the mayor or the clerk could then recognize the next speaker in the queue, and it would reset the timer and update the speaker queue. So that has been a really helpful way for a lot of our customers to manage their hybrid and virtual meetings. When you want to have a vote, there's a number of different ways you can handle it. So you can do it, just by manually selecting a mover and a seconder, and then, all in favor, aye, on to the next item, and then you can select your vote result. Or you could do roll call votes and select all. You just call the roll manually and tick off all the names as you go. You can also do. I'll just back this out for a second. You can also do, if you wanted to, this is an add-on module. If you want to add this later, you can also do electronic move and second. So the elected officials could then submit a move and a second. So I've just moved through my tablet, and then you can select who moves and seconds that way. And you can open it up to a vote. So everybody can vote from their tablet. So the vote screen pops up, and I can vote yes or no, or if the municipality allows for an abstention, you can abstain. The mayor would see the votes coming in, and the clerk as well, see all the little check boxes coming in real time. Let's go back to the public display. So around the TV screens in the commission room, you're going to see the title of the item and any details or the wording of the motion or resolution. You'll see vote in progress. And then as all the other votes come in, Okay, we close the vote, and then the vote is displayed. So if you have a horseshoe-shaped dais or whatever your seating plan is, we can match the vote result to match your seating plan. The vote result pops up, and the vote result automatically goes right into the minutes. So this is a really helpful way to help manage meetings, especially if they're virtual or hybrid. And again, with the meeting app, you can make your markups and annotations with your markup. Let's see here, move that little bar. The annotation tool, so you can highlight and underline and strike through. You can, or there we go. There's a underline that or strike. Use your stylus or your finger or your mouse. Personally, I love using sticky notes. I actually do. I use them all the time when I'm reviewing documents with my team. So this makes it very easy to manage. They remain private. All the notes remain private for each individual. And it's super handy. You'll have a little, if you leave any notes, you know, anytime where I leave a note or an annotation, there'll be a little icon here. So if I look at the agenda when it first comes out and then don't touch it for a few days later, I'll know where I made all my notes and markups. So I don't have to, you know, take out a bunch of sticky notes or those little tabs to mark on my paper agenda everywhere I mark. This is really easy to keep track of it. One last thing is, if you do have a conflict, if somebody wants to declare a conflict, you can self-declare a conflict right from the app. A lot of jurisdictions like that because they can review the elected official can review it a few days before the meeting, declare they have a conflict, and then they know that that's coming up before the meeting even happens. So that's a really helpful tool. That's the agenda view. I can go back into the home screen. I can manage all my meetings here on the right-hand side. I've got some really quick, easy access resources in the bottom left. So maybe the purchase rules, like what are the city's rules for purchasing? What are the procurement rules, or what are our bylaws, or what's code? You know, where are our codes, or maybe something as simple as a commissioner's expense report template. And then any announcements that come up, you know, that the clerk or the city manager wants to make people aware of. Those can be managed here as well. So this is a great tool for keeping everybody on the same page with what's happening. So that's a little bit of a blurb there on the functionality. I'll just show a few examples. This is Livingston County in Michigan. So they use Escribe for both their agendas and minutes and their meetings. So they're all their current and past meetings. And as well as managing their boards and committees, so their boards, details on their boards, all of their members, any vacancies and applications. Detroit, as well as a customer of ours, so this is their agendas and minutes page. Here's a sample of their HTML version of their agenda, so anytime you click on an item, the details, or sorry, the attachments, the supporting documents show up on the right-hand side. A lot of cities like that, particularly if they have low bandwidth areas. You know, instead of downloading a full few hundred pages of a PDF packet, very easy to manage that way. Here's another example of a city that uses, or a municipality that uses YouTube with their agenda. So if you click on any particular item here, you know, it'll adjust the timestamp. So if I go back down to what item was I on before? So if I click on item F2, discussion and consideration for the Barcroft subdivision road acceptance petition, click on that, and it will advance to the timestamp when that item was on the floor. Of course, the supporting documents there as well. So this clerk was, you know, went from paper and waiting up until 11 o'clock on a Friday for the late items to come in and print off 8 copies and then drive around town all day on a Friday dropping off packets or couriering them, which is expensive. Now saves tons of hours every week. And this particular customer, Marvin, North Carolina, they signed a subscription agreement at the end of October, started their project in the beginning of November, and with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, they were live first week of January, and they've conducted, they've created, I think, 12 different meeting types, and they've conducted a ton of meetings so far. So, yeah, that's Marvin. So, back to the slide deck to just kind of whip through a few extra thoughts here. we're a cloud-based platform. We're hosted in Microsoft Azure, based in 2 main locations, Washington State and Virginia. Real-time mirroring, so if one site goes down, automatically can switch over. And there's no offshore storage or backup. So your data, you have got guaranteed data sovereignty. It's about nominally about 12 weeks for implementation, very realistic. We can go faster if you want us to, but that's sort of the realistic time frame. We do take an incremental approach, get things going up pretty fast, but it's a crawl, walk, run approach. We have done some things to optimize our processes and our deliveries, particularly around how we deliver training, which is for the clerks department and the administrators, self-paced learning. It shaves about a month off of implementation. So we make sure you're up and running very quickly. So again, some assurance, cloud-based software, highly configurable. We don't do customizations, which is why we can do this so quickly in a reasonable amount of time. We've done over 365 public sector implementations. Your project communication is well laid out from the beginning. Everybody knows their role and what they're doing. Our methodology is standardized, which means, hey, we've done this over and over and over again. We could do it in our sleep, underwater, in Latin probably. Training is standardized, and we make sure that it's complete. By the time you're ready to go live, we make sure you're confident and comfortable in using it. Documentation is online, easy to access, it's always current, continuously updated. So why Escribe? We are the best of class meeting management solution for organizations of all sizes, no matter if you're, we've got customers, 500 residents, we've got customers north of 1.3 million, but it's, you're going to notice dramatic measurable improvements to process and efficiency. It's industry-leading technology, rapid and realistic implementation timelines, and that is so crucial right now while clerks and staff have lots on their plates and they still need to do a project like this. We hold their hand every step of the way and run behind them with the training wheels off. Training's online and self-paced, and most of all, Escribe is all about customer experience, great implementation experience, highly stable, functional software, and amazing customer support. So if you'd like me to field some questions, happy to do so now. So hopefully that made sense, and everybody's looking forward to a great project with us. I know we're pretty excited to welcome Muskegon into the Escribe family.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Blair, for that presentation and sharing all those insights. Some exciting capabilities there. Building on some of the capabilities we have and enhancing many others, and more importantly, perhaps from staff's perspective, streamlining processes so they can free up their time and energies to focus on better serving our community. So much appreciated for that. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Blair on this solution and subscription service? None? All right. Well, I do have a couple questions for you while you're here with us. It looked like on Livingston County, I think it was embedded right onto their website. So that's what we would do here. And so all of this would be publicly accessible as well. Then all of our residents could go right to our website, and your service is embedded into our website.
Sorry, there's a little bit of echo on there. Can you repeat the question, or can?
Yeah, I was just wanting to inquire about the service being publicly accessible. That looked like in your presentation it was embedded in another municipality's website, and I just wanted to confirm that was the case. And then if the querying functions, the searchability of it. And then lastly, if there's opportunity for the public to provide feedback directly there on an agenda item that could then be forwarded to the commission and management as those questions or input gets is added to the to our website or to the agenda or to your portal or however, if that function is possible.
Okay, great. Yeah, I got all that. So what I shared with you, those other customer examples, those are basically, that's a city website with what's called an iframe. So it's a publishing iframe. It's a little window that Escribe provides, just HTML code that sits inside of the city's website. So it's a page within a page, essentially. So that frame sits in your web page, and anything that the clerk's department or a committee coordinator would publish from Escribe would show up on either the calendar or the upcoming and past meetings, along with the agendas, the minutes, and the video. So that is embedded. It's very easy to set up, and we make sure it gets set up properly. There is search functionality as well, so the members of the public will be able to go in and do keyword searches and get hits on where those words show up in agendas and minutes, as well as parse it down by meeting type and date, and then they can go into the individual agendas or minutes documents themselves and sort of parse down a little bit further and find exactly what they're looking for. And I think there was one other question about the ability to leave comments on agendas. Was that the question? The ability to do that?
Yes, leading public feedback or questions. Yes.
Right, exactly. So yes, we do have a module for that. I've provided pricing to the clerk's department. It wasn't in the initial package, but that is something that we can easily add at any time. I would recommend crawl before you walk, before you run. That's one of our mottos, and I would if you wanted to add it now, fantastic, let's add it now. But I would recommend everybody get used to using the platform. Give yourselves a good month or two to get used to it, and then add it on. And certainly, if you wanted to do electronic voting at some point, get comfortable using the platform in meetings, and then add it. But yeah, so for public comments, there's quite a bit of configurability around that module. So this would allow your residents to go into an HTML version of the agenda, click on an item, and then click leave a comment. And then they would be able to type in whatever fields you want to enable, so name and address and email and whatever you want to be captured, and then they can leave a comment on the agenda. You can configure it so that you can only leave comments on certain agenda items. You can configure the deadlines for how long, up till whatever date they're allowed to leave comments. So you want to leave comments up until 3 p.m. the day of the meeting, or 3 p.m. the day after, or whatever it might be. You can configure it so that as soon as the resident leaves a comment and then clicks, they'll receive an email, and they click the link in the email to validate, yes, I intended to leave that comment. Once they click that link, the comment will show up on the agenda, and elected officials and members of the public will be able to see it. Or instead of that, you can have it so that the clerk or whoever is sort of administrating the meeting can vet those comments as they're coming in, deem their appropriateness, and then add, approve them to be added. And you can turn on profanity filters. You can turn on polling as well, so you can, at a glance see if this resident is in favor of that item, or if they're opposed to the item, or if they are neutral on the item. So it makes it very easy to sort of get a good sense in terms of which way sentiment is swaying. And elected officials will see those comments come in on agenda items, even in real time. So if residents were commenting during the meeting, they'd be able to see them. And we found, it's been very popular in California, and it's really sort of starting to catch on.
Excellent. Thanks so much for those insights, and exciting to hear about the additional capabilities and add-ons that we can do subsequently. And then just one more question that I have is, all the content that's created via this system, is it still accessible or able to be retrieved or downloaded if, for whatever reason, the subscription is suspended at a future time?
There was the question was, do you still retain rights to your data if you were to cancel the subscription? Was that it? Yes. So yes, it's actually in our subscription agreement, how we handle customer data. So we're very staunch in our beliefs that your data is your data. We don't touch it. We don't look at it. We never access it. It's in secure Microsoft locations, and they've got security to the nines, and processes that are very well documented, industry standards all across the globe to make sure that your data is protected. But yes, if you were to cancel your subscription with Escribe, then it's our obligation to have, get your data back to you within 30 calendar days. And you'd get everything back to you in its native format. So anything that's a Word file, an Excel file, a PDF, PowerPoint, anything that's in there, you would get it back in its native format.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much. And then, Madam Clerk,
Thank you.
what's your outlook on when you're going to bring this to the commission for approval or disapproval?
It's my understanding that it's under, the pricing is under what the city manager is allowed to approve, so it doesn't technically have to go to the commission. But I wanted you to see it and see what you think of it, and because you need to be on board for this to be successful. So.
Absolutely. Is it reflected then in the Reforecast budget, or it'll be reflected in the new fiscal year budget?
We actually have enough in this year's budget that we can do it right now.
We have the resources already available within our current budget.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments before we move on to the next item? Or does our manager, Mike Sell, do you have anything to add on this?
Really just to compliment the clerk's office, because they've done a lot of work trying to look at a bunch of different options that would be available to us. And, they've really put the time in to find something that would work well for us.
Commissioner Gorman.
Yeah, I just want to also thank the clerk's office for the clear research. I'm very excited about this, but I agree. If it did go to a vote before us, I'd feel more comfortable hearing from all commissioners with yes, I understand how this is going to work, and I understand how it's going to change how I handle the meeting. So I would feel more comfortable if everyone voted in favor of it, just so we're clear how we're going to move forward together.
Okay. Are you? I'm just wondering in that regard. So you're encouraging
If
us to bring this
everyone-
to a formal vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think-
I just want to make sure I
yes,
understood
yes.
clearly. Okay. Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. No, speaking of budget, I didn't see a price on this. They're priced for the software. What is the price, I should ask?
Blair,
It's less than 20.
Yes.
it's about, is it about 18,000? Trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll tell you it is. And I printed, there we go. So it is, $17,920 is the subscription fee. And we've given a 50% discount on implementation services. So it's $2,940 first year implementation and training fees. So that's setup and training for everything that's in the package.
So total about 20,860 or so with the implementation,
That's-
and that's an annual fee.
Yep,
And for
correct.
technical
And the annual
support
fee is
and all of
based
that.
on
That
the
included the technical
17,920.
support. The technical support too.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, correct. So technical support, you get your customer success manager, which is like an account manager, and they would be a point of escalation, as well as if you need additional modules, or say, hey, we just had an election and we're introducing 3 new committees and we need some help in terms of, how we restructure our agendas and minutes for our procedures. They've got enough knowledge of like Robert's Rules and parliamentary procedure. They can say, okay, well, here's how you would do it.
Thank you, Blair. Vice Mayor German, did you have any follow-up?
No, that's it.
No?
Thank
All
you.
right. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, just a question for the city clerk. And does this have everything that you were looking for? Is there anything outstanding that you couldn't find in software that you were really looking to utilize in the office to streamline, or is this like as good as it's
We
gonna get for
studied
you
many
guys?
of them. Mike Vandermolen was very involved in it, RIT, which is back there too. And we did feel that out of everybody that they offered everything that we wanted. There are some modules that they talked about, but we were more about baby steps and let us take our, that few months and kind of like get used to this before we consider adding some of those modules on, but I think it also helps us with some of those ideas of the hybrid meetings that we've talked about maybe in the future. At least you'd have some more options on there. I think this is a good one.
I'm super geeked about it because of the opportunity and support for the hybrid meeting, which is
Yes.
something, I'm 150% behind.
Yep.
So if this is going to do that, then thank you for doing the work behind that and for, again, being mindful of the baby steps and needing to learn and understand. Like Blair said, you've got to crawl before you can walk. And so I would support this, absolutely.
We want to give a big thank you. She's not here tonight, but Kimberly Young did a lot of work on this, so I want to make sure she gets her kudos for that.
Great job, Kim.
Yes. Great job. And thanks so much for bringing this forward to us. I think it's going to be a great improvement. So thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
And then,
Thank you, everybody.
take care and be
Appreciate
well.
it. Have a good evening.
And so, since we've already had a work session, how does the commission, we may or may not have Commissioner Emery tomorrow with us. But she is hoping to be with us tomorrow. So given that this has been on a work session, how would commission feel about adding this to our agenda tomorrow? Or would you prefer it be brought for a formal vote at our May 24th general session? Commissioner Ramsey.
I would be 100% fine with you adding it tomorrow. This is a comprehensive and complete educational opportunity for us, and so I feel 100% confident in vote.
Okay.
I support that.
Okay. It's too bad we didn't have the system already up and running.
I know.
It'd be easy to make the
Yeah.
addition. So there's going to be a little bit of work for Kim, but express our thanks and appreciations to Kim. And her consolation is that she'll be
That's
getting,
right.
getting
That's
the
right.
subscription.
Hopefully your life gets easier. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thanks so much. All right, moving on. We have Home American Rescue Plan, and we have our Community Neighborhood Services Director, Anita Bailey, with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor and commissioners, let me just do this. Whew, hot in here. So, what I have before you tomorrow is a hearing. And so tonight is really just to get any questions answered that you may have, any concerns, any comments that you may have. But tomorrow's hearing is really for the comments so that we can put them on record. And this funding, the American Rescue Plan dollars for home, they were provided to us in April of last year. We received the first letter. Then there was conversation with anything new. It takes time for HUD to prepare us for what we ought to do or how to proceed. And so during the fall of last year, we were given some more direction. And that direction really was to get comments from our public, from the public agencies, not necessarily the citizens at that time, but to hear from other service agencies like ourselves who are committed to our community. And so that's when we submitted the survey. And the survey in itself asked 4 very simple questions. Who's the vulnerable population that you serve? How can we help them? And they knew that there was $1 million at stake. Are you willing to partner? And then we asked, what population do you right now represent? And so we received a lot of information from a number of agencies. And so the response and the responses that we asked for were submitted to Sharonda Carson in our office. I wanted to kind of be separate from it so that they could feel comfortable in saying whatever they wanted to say, each agency. And in the process of time, then she was directed to set up a meeting with those who would come. And so our first meeting was huge. We did it virtually. And we did a hybrid, so there were some that felt comfortable coming in January. And then therefore, we've had 3 meetings with the public. We've added people. And so we do have a list, if that would be helpful for you, to see who these partners are. And also the dates that we had the meetings and some of the comments and things that we coordinated during each of those meetings. And so the purpose behind the home art funding is to do something different than what we've done before for a vulnerable population. And they wanted it to be something that we didn't have. And it was surprising in our first meeting to find out that we did not have any services for children under the age of 18. It was also just as exciting and kind of like, wow, you didn't know that we have this service here, and we have that service there, and that they do this, and we do that. And so there was a lot of conversation and explorative identification of services that some of our agencies didn't know. So it's been a great partnership. Some partnerships or partners have fallen off because the focus is on children and their focus is on something else. And we appreciate that, and we appreciated all their comments that we received. So one of the things that we will provide for you, because I saw a lot of heads saying, yes, you want to see who our partners are, the meetings and that. So I don't know if you want to go up and print those for the commission tonight. The hearing tomorrow is to hear from you. We hope that some partners, I don't know, do we have any partners here today? Yes. So we have one partner here who will speak to share who they are and what they would bring as a resource. That's the intent, is that we are focused. And when you talk about an aim, the target isn't everywhere. And so when we compiled what was said at these partner meetings, our youth don't have a place. Any child under the age of 18 doesn't have anywhere to go. We found out that there are children who are being sent to other communities.
Absolutely.
To Whitehall, to Zealand, and so when you're an older child, able to walk and hitchhike back to a community that you know, the safety is there. So we had some programs prior to these last 4 to 5 years that were helpful, that had a place for children who were just born up to 17. And so there's Child Haven that we really are in the process of talking with the county about. They were the authorizers of that. There is the Webster's House, which was something that was authorized through the courts and through everyone's place. Nothing like saying we're going back and doing exactly what we did before, but what we did before was something, and it worked. And there were kids that were assisted at that time, and we have to do that. And that's what HUD is saying. What do you have in your community that isn't being met? And who is that group? And so we know who the group is. So that's not even up for question. And I'm happy to come to you tonight to share with you that these are the answers that we got from the collective group. That, and you'll see it here on your review form, the agenda item review form. So some other additional information was provided to you as support in case you had questions. So there are services that we still want to support, by letting the youth know that they're here in this community. However, if you're not 18, you can't go to their door for the resources that we want to make available. And those resources, if you'll see, some housing, there's education, there's health, there's wellness, mental health, there's even occupational services that we can provide to help them get a job. And so I'm excited with that. I'm going to let our partner come up and share who they are and what resources they have for us.
Thank you, Director Bailey. I'd like to come up and give your name and name of your agency.
Hi, I'm Rachel Zaragoza. I'm with the Muskegon Area Intermediate School District. I didn't really prepare anything for today, but I would be happy to answer any questions about the current status of homeless youth in the county. I'm the McKinney-Vento coordinator for our region in Muskegon, and I represent our county with the state. I work with a statewide group that monitors unhoused youth, and we discuss different funding sources and services and programs that are available around the state. And so I work with every school district in the county, every charter school, every school district is required to have, is required to have a homeless liaison for the McKinney-Vento law. And I work with all of them, monitoring the number of students that are identified, how we identify students, and working with them directly to identify what their needs are. And like we discussed, Muskegon County is one of the only counties in the state that does not have a runaway or crisis youth center or shelter. There literally is no place for our kids that are under 18 to go. So as the coordinator for our county, I help arrange funding with schools to address the immediate needs of homelessness with our students. And because we don't have any place for them to go, we're giving out gas cards so that they can keep their heat on in their car in the winter and they can live in their car. We're calling out to people's friends to see if they can stay with friends over the winter. There's just a lot of really painful, terrible situations that are happening right now, and our kids don't have any place to go. So I'm really advocating for this money be used in that direction, and that when we look at housing and we look at the services and support that's needed for youth, that we look at what models have worked and have been successful, and use research-based, evidence-based approach to what is working and what can we replicate here that is going to be effective and sustainable for our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Zaragoza. So grateful for the good work that you are doing, and appreciate your interest in partnering with the City of Muskegon. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yes, I have a quick question for Ms. Zaragoza. You mentioned two things and I just want some clarifying information around it. You spoke about runaways, but then you talked about homeless youth through the MAISD. And I know that as are identified from all of my work in this area before, there are homeless families that have youth that are in school, and then there are homeless youth individuals. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the efforts behind these dollars, which of those two are we focusing on? So are we talking about a family shelter, or are we talking about opportunities with homeless families with young children, or homeless youth individuals? Or is the answer yes? Because
yeah, I think all of the above.
Okay.
My advocacy is for youth that are under 18 that are either that are mostly unaccompanied or on their own.
Okay, so unaccompanied. But
I know with this funding, we want to expand it with families and families that have young kids as well too.
Right, and so then are we looking at building capacity in our partner agencies like Every Woman's Place, and then Family Promise of the Lakeshore that I don't see on this list, but I could just be missing it, as those can both be family emergency shelters?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Love that. All right, great. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Zaragoza and ISD?
Battery on that one died.
No? All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Now, Commissioners, any questions or comments for our Director Bailey? Okay, another microphone.
Let me just say before, if it's good,
He's gonna flip it out in a second.
I gotta do it.
No. I'm a little quirky today when the heat gets to me.
Yes.
I want you to know that this is not anything that has to be decided, meaning we have to submit to HUD what our focus is. They have to tell us, okay, go forth. And we have till 2030 to spend the money. And so we have a nice time to create a foundation of those who aren't on the list. The county's not on the list. We've been identifying people that we haven't had interaction with yet. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but this is something that over the next few weeks and months, we're going to solidify and come up with the plan of how we're going to help the youth. And Commissioner Ramsey, how we're going to help those who are in the continuum of care. So we do not have a lot of rental property that is currently available, period, but then it's not even available, affordable. And so if we are the owners of property that are for our continuum of care families, that's another facet of this $1 million that will help to bring about some sustained affordable housing for continuum of care families who are homeless, already in the system and counted through HUD as a homeless family. And so those who are supporting homeless families, like the two agencies you mentioned, yes, if there's support for them. And this is sustained in that we can use our home funds, our CDBG funds, to continue to, but we have partners with big bucks. I'm just looking around so you know that we as a group, as community residents can help support, as well as our county, who received a lot of funds and who these programs ran through. So that's why the county is definitely going to be added to the list. So, and I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you, Director Bailey. Yeah, that ensuring the sustainability of this program is so incredibly important. And so I'm appreciative of the focus that you have on serving our youth. Commissioner St. Clair.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. This is the population that I work with in my day job. Youth have long had difficulty with finding housing. We have a huge and mostly invisible homeless youth community that is very much under the radar and are very unsafe. And I am very excited about the possibility of building something, because this is exactly where the gap is, exactly where it is.
Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A comment and a question. Thank you, Ms. Bailey, for all the good work that you do and your staff. As Commissioner St. Clair stated, there is a huge problem with homelessness with youth. And given the fact that you said that this list is not exhausted, there's other opportunities for other organizations, maybe startup organizations, to partake in this as well. Now, do they have to be 501c3? Is the private, or how does that work? And how do they get in touch with you? Do they just call, come in, submit, proposal or application, or what?
They can contact us through our website. Through the website, we're available through every area of Facebook and our website, our email address, which is cnsmail@shorelincity.com. But phone call, we take every type of walk-in. We're open Monday through Thursday.
Thank you, Director Bailey.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, I have a comment and then a statement. I'm not up here to tell anybody how to do their work. Out of every woman's place, we used to have the Webster House. If there is anyone that we could contact from Webster House, because that was a huge tragedy when we lost that.
Absolutely.
So
Major.
that's a wonderful resource. And then I just want to say it. Kudos. You and the team knocked it out of the park again. This is a wonderful list. This is a wonderful attempt at getting people in a room to discuss how we can benefit, and you pulled it off, especially in our current, whatever situation with everything in the world being insane. So good job. Good job to you and the team. It's exciting. I know that people who do this work like me every day are going to be ecstatic about this, as Commissioner St. Clair shared. So just good job, guys. let us know if there's anything we can do. Yeah, clap. No, that's real.
You know what? And that ought to be for our partners as well, because without the MAISD in the room, we would not have known the volume of children who are just, as you said, in a sad situation. And we're here, and we have the funds, and I'm so grateful that we're able to do it. I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Great job.
Excellent. Thank you. So you're putting those federal dollars to good work and service to our community. Thank you for your stewardship. Any final comments, questions? No? All right. Thanks so much, Director Bailey.
Thank you.
And there will be a public hearing tomorrow on this item, so anyone at home that wishes to weigh in or give comment, you can show up tomorrow night. Or you can email citycommission@shorelincity.com beforehand. All right. Next up, we have Shoreline Drive traffic study. So we've got Jamie Pesh on our planning department and Director Leo Evans with DPW.
You only got one chance to get this right.
Under pressure. Into the rescue.
Is this one working now? We gotta use the handheld.
You're up there. Yep.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. Got Jamie here with me, as you mentioned. We're going to talk about the Shoreline Drive project that came up about a month ago. We did kind of hit pause on that, given all the comment and feedback that we were receiving about that. Gave us some time to put together a lot of responses. We've got a presentation to share that we think answers a lot of questions, talks about the history, the why, and the what, just all aspects of this project. So I'll get it started. Jamie's going to fill in a big chunk of the middle, and big thanks to Jamie for putting this all together on his first day back from vacation. And I think we will get it posted to the city website probably first thing tomorrow. So this same version will be out there and available for anybody that wants to download it. It's a lot of words on there, slides that we won't be able to cover everything tonight. All right. For the RFP that we issued, this is the timeline that's specific to that project. That project consists of a pilot to experimentally close one lane of each direction on Shoreline Drive for a set period of time and measure the impacts of that. Kind of the way this would go, if the engineering contract is approved tomorrow, we would spend the month of May just preparing, the month of June doing some more detailed level planning, drawings, designs, getting permits. We do have one aspect in there. Late in June, we have a public open house meeting where we'll present those detailed drawings kind of ahead of any bidding or any implementation. We would have to get bids for all the traffic control devices, the paint cones that get placed, and then we would look to August to October to kind of be our test period. We want to hit a little bit of summer so we can make sure we answer those questions about peak traffic, and also some of the off season so we can answer those as well. Once that's done, we would come out of this with a summary report that details what worked, what didn't work, and everything in between. So I kind of covered that already. That just talks about what the project covers, lane closure. The one thing I don't think I mentioned is the limits are from Southern to Terrace is what's called out in the RFP, and that's where we would kind of focus the efforts of that pilot project. And then, just to note that this is really a pilot. This is a 3-month experiment that kind of lays the groundwork for some additional discussions later on that Jamie and I will cover. One of the biggest concerns that we heard after this was initially released was just the concern about congestion, traffic backups, traffic delays, things of that nature. It's a little oversimplified here, but the way I bring it is the traffic on Shoreline Drive on an average day is somewhere between 12 to 20,000 cars a day. That road operates at a level of service A, which essentially means there's no delays as you travel through that road on a given day, with a speed limit of 40 to 45 miles per hour throughout this corridor. If you boil it down to the simplest comparison, the Federal Highway Administration estimates that a two-lane, two-way roadway with 22 to 25,000 vehicles per day would operate at a level of service B, which equates to roughly 10 to 15 seconds of delay per intersection. Overall, what you're talking about in the simplified sense is something like a minute to a minute and a half delay to get through this corridor, whereas now there's somewhere between 0 to 60 seconds of delay. It's not a substantial amount of delay. The second concern that we really heard was just the diversion of traffic, right? Our people are going to get off of Shoreline Drive and jump back onto Muskegon and Webster because Shoreline Drive's going to be backed up and congested. I think my answer to that is just the preliminary modeling doesn't suggest that's likely. An additional 30 to 60 seconds on Shoreline Drive is still going to be faster than using Muskegon or Webster Avenue. That being said, it's certainly something that we would look at during the pilot stage to measure and try to quantify how many cars use those routes before, how many cars use them during this pilot, and how many cars use them after. Is there a change, and what does that do to those streets? So it's something that will have to be addressed. And I think this is where I'll turn it over to Jamie, because he can talk a little bit more about the why and the history of how we came here today.
Sure. Yeah. So I thought it would be helpful to explain a little bit about the history of Shoreline Drive, how it came to be, what its original purpose was, and how we got to where we are today. So the construction of the road began in the 1950s, and it was meant to serve as the business route through downtown Muskegon. And as it stands today, it was completed in the mid-2000s. It includes everything Seaway Drive, Shoreline Drive, and Moses J. Jones Parkway. And the highway was introduced as a means of serving downtown businesses and industrial uses along the waterfront. Aligning with the national trends of the time, post-World War II Muskegon saw a sudden influx of private car ownership and travel, and also benefited from federal monies for highway construction. The construction of Shoreline Seaway did not come without doing a considerable amount of damage to Muskegon neighborhoods, and I'll get into that shortly. So in the 1950s, Seaway Drive was constructed, and it was previously titled the Norton Glade Expressway, but renamed in 1959. The map that you see here is the configuration of the street when it was first completed. It created the one-way pair that we probably all remember as Muskegon and Webster Avenues. In the 1960s, Skyline Drive opened, and that was renamed in 1989 to Moses J. Jones Parkway. That was named for the longtime pastor of John Wesley AME Zion Church, a labor leader and civil rights leader. So this doesn't directly relate to the highway, but Terrace Street was constructed as part of the urban renewal project that brought us to the Muskegon Mall in the 1970s, and the formation of a downtown traffic loop had started. That loop was extended in the 1980s out to this former industrial sites along the waterfront, specifically Lakey Foundry. It did end short at 4th Street and tied back into the regular street grid. The 1990s saw phase 1 of what we know today as Shoreline Drive funded. That went from 9th Street to 4th Street and reconstructed the overpass over the end of Webster Avenue. And then the 2000s saw phase 2 of Shoreline Drive complete that traffic loop and turn back Muskegon and Webster Avenues to local control. So that is basically how we got to the point we're at today. Terrace Street at this point was more or less out of the picture. And I did not mention that this stage of the project, people often called the road to nowhere because it pretty much took you out of your way to bring you right back to the point where you started. And then this was the completed version and the one that we know today. So long-term planning. Ever since the construction of Shoreline Drive started almost 30 years ago, city plans have been addressing its presence in downtown and have called for efforts to lessen its impact. The 1997 Master Land Use Plan was the first mention of this, and that was actually written before Shoreline Drive had been opened entirely. A lot of what's being discussed today reflects what was said in those past plans. All the way back in 1997, the plan forecast high traffic volume seen today and predicted the difficulties now associated with crossing the street. what I did in these next slides, just so everybody is kind of keeping up with it, I have quotes taken from some of these plans that address this, but they're all sort of grouped under topics that I'll discuss in more detail. So after nearly 3 decades of talking about this in our various city plans, why are we taking action now? First and foremost is safety, and that's safety for people inside and outside of vehicles. Shoreline Drive is one of the most dangerous roads in the city, and in the last 5 years, 22% of crashes within the city involving a pedestrian where the result was either a fatality or a serious injury occurred in this area. The reason for that, as you can see by the diagram at the right, the faster the speed of a car in a crash with a pedestrian, the more likely that it is the pedestrian will die from injuries. In the last decade, 8 of 30 total traffic fatalities within the city occurred on business route, US 31. And the way to address this is to reduce vehicle traffic speeds. That doesn't come in the form of heavier enforcement by police officers enforcing a speed limit. That comes from street design that encourages slower travel speeds. This is a map of every fatality as a result of a traffic accident in the city of Muskegon from 2011 to 2020. And as I stated in the previous slide, 8 of the 30 occurred on the business route, with 4 more occurring on portions of US 31 within the city and 1 on M46, which is Apple Avenue. That's a total of 13 of the 30 traffic fatalities took place on state highways in the city. It should be noted that state highways account for 11 miles of city streets, where we have approximately 180 miles of major and minor local streets. That's the 6% of our streets accounting for 40+% of fatalities. So again, in 1999, shortly after the master plan was adopted, there was a downtown plan adopted that also anticipated the eventual turn back of Muskegon and Webster and incorporation of Shoreline Drive as the business route. They also emphasized the growing divide between downtown and the waterfront created by Shoreline Drive. So one of the other topics, aside from safety, that this project is hoping to address is downtown and waterfront connectivity. Pretty much all of the plans listed reference that as a topic of concern. And maintaining highway speeds requires limiting cross streets, intersections, anything that would cause traffic to interfere with the flow of traffic, free flow of traffic on the highway. This results in a difficulty in reconnecting our downtown and shoreline. And most of these plans cite a lack of pedestrian amenities and call for traffic calming measures to slow the cars. But this project goes a step further in right-sizing the roadway, acknowledging that the road is overbuilt for the number of cars it could carry, or it could be built in a capacity that could better balance all of the users of a street. So in some cases, it's not so much the presence or absence of pedestrian amenities. This specific intersection is 3rd Street going across Shoreline Drive. And while there are crosswalks only on one side of both of Shoreline Drive, there's a sidewalk missing on the north side of the street, and there are no pedestrian refuge islands for people to wait as traffic passes. The biggest thing is the scale of this street. If anybody's ever crossed here, it can feel like a 45-yard touchdown run sometimes, and that's because it is a 45-yard touchdown run. This crosswalk leaves a person walking or rolling through an intersection exposed to traffic for nearly 150 feet. And if you overlay the Hackley Stadium football field on that at the same scale, you really get a better sense of the scale that the highways build. The Imagine Muskegon plan from 2003 is often cited as the plan that started everything that's going on downtown. It was a community-oriented plan and really grassroots. The quote from 2003 makes one think about anybody that had ever been close to Shoreline Drive would probably be hard-pressed to say that that is an environment that isn't dominated by cars. That plan goes on to point out a number of different things that are listed here, but really it just elaborated on the goals of providing better access to a reclaimed waterfront and a walkable downtown with safe streets, accommodating transportation alternatives and automobiles. So again, we're not stopping cars from coming through here, but we're trying to balance the street and right-size the roadway. The most recently adopted planning document is our Imagine Muskegon Lake Plan, and that took a primary focus on intersections, and many of them along Shoreline Drive. It begins to address the lived experience of city residents and how the built environment plays a role in those experiences along the lakeshore. So I sort of summarized these next topics under quality of life for residents, but it deals a lot with development in downtown, development on the shoreline, as well as park space and the need for it as more people move into our neighborhoods. The effect of a highway on the surrounding properties, I think people have seen that played out multiple times. It's not necessarily a desirable thing to live next to, but in many cases it is a necessary thing. Ongoing downtown and waterfront development. We have Terrace Point, Harbor 31, Hartshorn Village, Adelaide Point, all happening on the waterfront side of Shoreline Drive, and each one is segmented from our downtown because of the road. And a growing number of residents near Shoreline Drive, like I said, will likely lead to additional demand for park spaces. One of our main event spaces downtown is Heritage Landing, and that specifically will take attendees that park downtown, walk from our neighborhoods, and force them to cross a dangerous road where this pilot project tries to address some of those challenges. I think this is the last point, or second to last point, is addressing social inequities. Sure looks like those photos in the background don't show up. There's a legacy of redlining, urban renewal, highway construction in Muskegon, as there are in many different cities in the country. Today, urban highways are commonly known to have led to disinvestment in core cities, accelerating suburbanization, and causing damage to their immediate surroundings, often residential neighborhoods. Okay, that image shows up. So I don't have time to go into the full details of this, but those familiar with the practice of redlining may recognize this map. This is a 1930s map created by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, depicting their redlining lending practices in Muskegon at the time. Areas shaded red represented neighborhoods that the HOLC deemed hazardous for loaning money. This could have been for a number of reasons, but among them were demographic makeup of an area. This is that same map with the route of the highway overlaid on top, obviously targeting the areas deemed high risk in terms of offering loans. The route follows that path of least resistance, is probably what they would consider it at the time, and this is through often low income or minority neighborhoods. It's not at the end of this presentation, but when we upload it, we will contain links to some very helpful websites out there that you can look at what was actually written on these reports from the 1930s and see the reasons that they were considered high-risk areas for loaning. Okay, so this is actually the final one. Fiscal responsibility. It's a pretty simple concept overall. Larger streets are more expensive to maintain. They're more expensive to repair pavement, replace pavement when time comes due for that. Stormwater management is more complicated because you have to deal with more stormwater runoff that's landing on the pavement. Snow removal, obviously, more lanes means more passes from plow trucks. Traffic signal operation. Before I got here, I was not aware how much it costs to operate traffic signals, and Leo can speak to the expenses associated with that. And obviously policing. When you have a street where people tend to speed because of the design of the street, for many years the approach has been to more heavily police it to make sure that people are driving the speed limit, and that takes staff time, and that takes other resources away from the city. So before we finish, we found one example in San Diego, California. There's a lot of examples out there. La Jolla Boulevard, and this is a brief before and after. It's just worth noting that road diets and reevaluating the presence of urban highways and urban freeways is a nationwide thing at this point. An internet search of road diets will turn up any number of examples where these types of projects have been undertaken. There's also a report that's published each year by the Congress for the New Urbanism called Freeways Without Futures that we'll include a link to on the final slide of this once we get it online. Again, a before shot. This would have been pre-2007, and an after shot of the same perspective about a decade later once the work was completed. So some details on this specific project. It's a road diet, taking a 5-lane roadway down to a 2-lane roadway, not too dissimilar from Shoreline Drive, and converting several intersections to roundabouts. The traffic volume before versus the traffic volume after shows almost no reduction in terms of the size. but speeds before show a significant reduction. You went from 40 to 45 miles an hour, much like we saw here, to 19 miles an hour. Traffic crashes reduced by 90% as a result of the road diet. Noise levels reduced by 77%. And the city took action to identify and address concerns on parallel streets before they completed the work. Planning began in 2000, and as I said, construction began in 2007. So we are quite a ways out. This is obviously, as Leo mentioned, a pilot project. It's an attempt to try out this before making any significant investments. Then I'll bring Leo back up. This is just a potential future Shoreline Drive timeline.
Yeah, just kind of playing on the La Jolla example here. We're kind of at year 2000 in their time frame. 2022 is our start year. If this works, you move into the next phase, which is to study those results, undertake public engagement, and develop a corridor master plan for this area. All that's going to take 3 to 5 years at least. You're probably 2029, 2030 before we really finalize a master plan and try to identify funding and undertake, a permanent project to totally rebuild that stretch of road. But I said we have to start today to get there in 2030 if we want to get to that stage. I think that's it. So we'll certainly open it up for questions if anyone has any questions or points they'd like to make or have us address. And I don't know if I mentioned the engineering services agreement that staff is recommending is on the agenda for tomorrow. So that's up for consideration as well. So.
Okay. Thanks so much, Director Evans and Mr. Pesh, for that excellent and well-informed presentation that does a great deal to help people understand not only the history, but the background and what are the motivating factors for why we'd even be exploring a narrowing of Shoreline Drive and what we hope to accomplish with that, all of which are very well-intentioned. And so thanks so much for that. Opening up to questions and additional input from the Commission. Commissioner Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Michael Ramsey, and I'm not a civil engineer. But I know if I don't ask these questions, there's a group of people in this room who will burn my house to the ground. So I would like to say that I am all about the road diet to make the access from downtown to our lakeshore more easily accessible, period. I want that. But I also don't want to disrupt anyone's neighborhood. So I know that a lot of time and money went into turning Western and Webster, nope, that's a lie, Muskegon and Webster back into neighborhood streets. When we talk about being able to identify any sort of traffic differentiation from what's currently happening now, what things will we put in place to record those, if that's a thing? Otherwise, I'm going to go sit at happenstance with Morning every day and just count cars that go by so that we can make sure that we are not reverting what we've already done to build community in that specific community. Is there an opportunity for us to look at rerouting the business that is going down Shoreline Drive to go down Laketon and hit the highway? And is that just some signage? Again, not a civil engineer, don't know the answers to any of these things. These are just questions I was asked, and so I'm asking you. And what can we do so that our neighbors have a place to share their experience while we're conducting the test? So that if there's something that isn't being caught, and even if it's qualitative or quantitative, that they have a place to do an info dump, so that we can hear their voice and they get a chance to share it with us, which could probably lessen frustration. I also want to say that you guys did a great job on this, and thank you for sharing the new time delay of the additional 15 seconds that people would be experiencing on that road, because that is not a concern to me. Where's the camera? That is not a concern to me. My biggest concern is to make sure that the neighborhood around Shoreline Drive is not disrupted from its current state, and that we have easier access to our lakeshore from the downtown for everybody who lives in all of these neighborhoods that bounce up to that area.
Here, here.
So with that, you can find me at michael.ramsey@shorelinecity.com and have at it.
Traffic diversion. What we would do is use historical count data that we have for both Muskegon and Webster streets as a baseline. We would also use hose counters, which you see often out. It's just two
Oh, the
pieces
little
of black rubber
toot
hose
toot.
across the street.
Okay.
If you do 2 of them, you can measure the speed of vehicles as well as count vehicles based on how far apart the hoses are.
Okay, so then we
those
want
would
to-
be used during and after this pilot as well to kind of collect data, right? So I don't think there'll be a diversion, but the data will tell us if there is or isn't.
Okay.
And the pilot will, flush that out over that 3-month time frame. We also may have some access to some other traffic counters, microwave style and things like that through different organizations. But yeah, we'll have to work on that. So part of that presentation and the public meeting in the end of June, we will identify what those likely corridors are, where we expect cars to go, or where we think we need to spend some time watching. And there'll be an opportunity, we'll have a map or some other list of, hey, these are the streets we're going to watch. And, if we're missing something, that's another good opportunity for those to come up and say, hey, what about this street? Why aren't you looking at this one? And we can say, well, we don't think it's an issue, or maybe we're going to add that. Signs for diversion, diverting people at Laketon. I don't have great luck with signs. People don't read signs when they drive. They go by what's the easiest route to get from A to B. Signs aren't always a bad thing, but I don't think you would realize much impact by just putting signs out on the street.
Support, these things I do not.
And comment, the one thing I think we could add, possibly that we didn't talk about, is we'll get a final report on this in December, January timeframe. Maybe that would be another good time to bring this back to a work session and kind of report out on those findings and give everybody a chance to review that document and bring back their own observations after the fact. I have to think some more about during. I'm sure we could set up like a listserv email type thing where you can send your emails to this generic account. Hey, I saw this on Tuesday. What do you think about that? Make sure we're not missing anything. We only have so many eyes and so many people out there working on this. So.
Awesome. Did I forget anything that we had concerns about? I'm just giving you a hard time. At the end, we'll be able to talk about it.
Great.
Leo, again, and Jamie, both of you, thank you so much for doing your work around this. I know that there was a lot of feedback from our neighbors. And the most important thing to me is that we were able to address that feedback with things that were real and relevant to the plan that we have and let them know that their voices were heard and that they are a part of this discussion as well. MLive did not do a good job on that. Thank you.
That's what they get for asking an engineer.
Right.
They should ask the planner probably.
Yeah. But I do want to thank you guys for showing up and letting our neighbors know that they were heard. And I want to thank Jamie for offering to stand out on the road for the entire test pilot so that he can just watch it on his own and take notes.
Yes, great questions and comments, Commissioner Ramsey, and great insights and answers to them as well, Director Evans. And yes, I wish the media had been more complete in their reporting, that an RFP had been published and that there was going to be a public meeting and there wasn't a foregone conclusion, nor was it decided already, and that ways for the public to engage and get their questions answered as well as to give their input. So, so maybe we can give some encouragement to our media to be partners with in public engagement.
I'm gonna respond to that if you'll let me.
Certainly,
I'm gonna
Ramsey.
support that, but I'm also gonna remind our neighbors that when you read something on the internet, it doesn't mean that it's true. I don't care what the source is. Come to us, just like a lot of you have done. I really appreciate that. But a lot of times we treat something that we read on the internet like a problem, and we get very frustrated about it, and then we reach out. Read it, be like, maybe not. Reach out, let's discuss it, and then if it's the case, get mad. Do it to it. I mean, that's where that work out of that comes from. But in the meantime, just like you did this time, reach out. And thank you for doing so.
Indeed. And thank you, Director Evans, for, if we were to move forward with this, including that additional open house for more opportunity for people to learn and give their feedback and give us an opportunity to address concerns as well with it. To kind of piggyback on one of the concerns that Commissioner Ramsey raised, which is potential disruption to our neighborhoods, if we were to move forward with this pilot, can we get extra speed enforcement on, say, Muskegon and Webster and other roads that may see, additional traffic, but more of concern, people that may be frustrated by being diverted and speeding or ignoring stop signs. And so I think it would be especially important in the earlier part of this pilot being implemented that we have that extra law enforcement presence and monitoring for speeding and traffic signs, ignoring traffic signs. Yes.
I'll have to talk with Captain Rush on that, but I would imagine we could probably direct some of our enforcement efforts towards matching that. Like you mentioned, the first couple days of something like this are usually the worst, far and away. You know, the first couple days of any change to a traffic pattern can be chaos and takes a little extra effort. And with a little bit of time and adaptation, people usually, manage to find their own ways around it. But yeah, we could certainly have that be a part of the discussion too.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Hood, do you have any questions or comments on this item at this time?
Nope.
All right. Commissioner St. Clair.
I appreciate the very thorough review, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this pans out.
Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Director Evans and Jamie, for your presentation and research. When I first heard about this project or attempt to study something like that, I'm going to tell you, and I'm still opposed of it right now because I haven't been sold on it, and we really don't know what the study will bring. And due to the fact that a similar study was done on Webster and Muskegon when the city decided to say, okay, let's close in the highway expressways, make it more walkable, to downtown, to the neighborhoods. Okay, they finally sold me on that, and that worked. From the outskirts now, when we're talking about our shoreline, traffic coming from south and north and south, and I look at most cities, when you come in, you see the skyline, that traffic flows smoothly. Concerns that I've been hearing, and we wouldn't know until, like you said, the actual study would be done, is, bag up during event times. Traffic being, as some of the commissioners stated, being diverted to other neighborhoods. And that defeats the purpose of us actually doing what we did on Webster and Muskegon. If we're going to drive that traffic, if that traffic drives to those neighborhoods on the basis of this project here being implemented. And that's a huge concern. And we've done some development in those neighborhoods. Our citizens have come accustomed to the change with Webster and Muskegon Street due to the traffic being slowed down. Now to possibly have that traffic increase more through their neighborhoods. And again, I don't think anyone knows the results of what it would, the findings would be because the study hasn't been done. And so those are concerns that I have. And as for the whole plan with itself, we mentioned the history of Shoreline Drive due to the urban renewal. And the last study talked about, when we did the Mayor Institute Design study, how that came about and through the racial divide from the neighborhoods to the shoreline. And I think if we're going to talk about how all of this stuff happened, let's get the correct history about how this stuff occurred. And there was some redlining also, and so there's more history, I believe, that you said, Jamie, you would share with the commission on things, and I have to see that as well. So, yeah, I'm a stickler when it comes to certain data and detail, and until I really get a clear understanding of how this was worked, I wouldn't know until the study. But I just think it defeats the purpose of what was done for the Muskegon and the Webster project to close off Shoreline Drive like that. So.
Yeah, I understand. And that's a common concern that we've heard for sure. I think the difficulty we have is I can't answer those questions until we do some of this pilot study to say
100%.
there is a problem or there isn't a problem. And if the study says there is a problem, there's definitely things we can do. The example project that Jamie pointed out on La Jolla, They identified those parallel streets, and I want to say they spent something like $7 million doing intersection changes and reconfiguring all of those secondary streets so that any of the traffic that did get diverted wasn't going to impact that neighborhood negatively. They added roundabouts, they did different things to slow traffic and, keep people on La Jolla, but going slower. And I think that could be part of this discussion too. But until we have that data, I don't really know how to answer that question.
Right. And just one last question. Okay, and also mention the Moses J. Jones Highway. If any changes was made, would that remain Moses Jones Expressway or Highway? If changes were made to Shoreline, traffic was coming through, be diverted back to Western or Muskegon Street? I don't know which one that is. I think it's Western. It would go down.
We weren't proposing any changes to the configuration on that stretch right now, but that stretch, it needs something different. 8 lanes of traffic and whatever that 350-foot width is through there needs to change. Mm-hmm. I think if you prove that this concept works on Shoreline Drive, you don't even need to have a study to prove that it's going to work on Moses Jones. Mm-hmm. But what that looks like would be part of that master planning. I think some of the groups have mentioned that, this really needs to be a corridor-wide effort, all the way from 96 back, or from 31 back to 31. The entirety of Business Route 31 needs to be studied. But this downtown core, whatever you prove could work in that downtown core could be copied to any of the other areas of this project. So.
And just one last thing. Now, that would be from Southern Street all the way back to Terrace, right? That what we're looking at. So is that about a mile or more? Or?
Yeah, I feel like it's just over a mile. Okay. But yes, those are the limits, Southern to Terrace.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German. And yeah, Moses Jones Parkway, that section near Marquette, that is even more egregious of a separation of our neighborhoods and our residents from not only our waterfront, but from our downtown.
Absolutely.
And so that certainly needs to be addressed and mitigated without a doubt. Did I see your hand up, Commissioner Hood? Did you have something to add or ask?
I was just going to add that I kind of agreed with the Vice Mayor on some issues. And I just want to know just how much traffic is walking across Shoreline not during event time.
I would say probably not much. No, I don't think it's a big use now, but
right.
Is the road itself a deterrent to that action, I guess would be the question I would ask. If that road wasn't there, would more people walk across it? Would there be more reason to?
And we need to consider that there's development happening on the waterfront, so that's likely to increase.
And if it was easier to get across, could there be more development? Like we know that Pigeon Hill is there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And people walk there, but Pigeon Hill also, it's risk takers. So if there was more opportunity for me to waddle across the street, maybe there could be more business there. Mm-hmm. More opportunity to engage our lakeshore.
The analogy I always heard is just because nobody's swimming across the river doesn't mean we don't need a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, hey, just because no one's swimming across the river doesn't mean we don't need a bridge. You heard it here first.
I don't think I've heard that one before.
No, yeah, it's new, brand new.
Did you have any follow-up, Commissioner Hood?
No.
Can't top that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gorman.
Oh, I'm excited to learn from this study. That's all.
All right. Any follow-up questions or comments, commissioners? No? All right, this item is on our is it on our consent? It's on our agenda tomorrow. I believe it's under consent. For an up and down vote on hiring the engineering firm to move forward with the study. Bidding would happen in a subsequent month, potentially July, so we'll have a sense of what the total cost would be then. So if there's compelling reason, if we decide to move forward with this contract tomorrow night, if there's compelling reason to take an off-ramp, there are off-ramps subsequently. Is that what I'm understanding, Director Evans?
Absolutely. Yep. The engineers could well do their own study and, point out some different things that we haven't thought of so far too. So.
Okay. Now, do you see value in doing the study, even if, we decide, no, we have no interest in moving forward with permanently putting Shoreline Drive in a road diet? Is there still value you see inherent in the study itself that we could use for other purpose perhaps, or to help just inform and educate ourselves?
I think so. I think there's, even if we decided as a group that there was not an appetite for the road diet, there's still a need for other improvements along that corridor, just to enhance the pedestrian walkability and, get rid of that 45-yard crossing. Small things that could still be done to improve that, even if the road diet wasn't, our final desire. So yes, I still think there's value in having that data and having those options and understanding what they are.
Does the scope of this study also look at alternatives to the road diet? Will it contemplate, I've heard people ask about pedestrian bridges and overpasses, different mixed feelings about the efficacy of one versus another, in particular costs, but things like that, or those islands. Are we going to be looking at some alternatives to help inform, or maybe it's a corollary process that we are analyzing and studying those alternatives to help inform the commission, down the road before we make anything permanent?
Yeah, this study does not specifically call out reviewing and studying those alternatives. That's something we could do ourselves in-house, and we've done some of that already. But no, this contract would not prepare any alternatives. This contract is geared towards designing and implementing a pilot road diet and studying the impacts of that. I would say that master planning process that happens, 2 to 3 years from now, might be a better time for some of those other discussions about tunnels or bridges or whatever other alternatives are available.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. And then if we were to move forward with this, one of the concerns I've heard from a few of our downtown businesses is just the potential harm or impact on their operations, and them just coming out, and we're just coming out of this pandemic. Well, hopefully we are coming out fully of this pandemic, but coming out of at least the restrictions, all the restrictions. And so they're like, this is maybe our first COVID-free summer. Just give us a break. And I understand that. I take that to heart. And I'd already asked, Jamie, you're like, why would we move forward with this year? And, partially because we have the opportunity to do so. We've got the green light from MDOT, seize the opportunity. And also the whole process is potentially 10 years before implementation if we choose to implement it. So it's a pretty long process. But what I'm wondering, this maybe is more of a question for Manager Mike Zell or any of our economic development team here, is how are we going to, if we move forward with this pilot, how are we going to engage our downtown businesses and kind of keep a pulse on what's happening and how they may be feeling the impact of this, and what steps we may be able to mitigate them, or and just generally, I'm sure we're already doing some of this already, but just in generally, given the challenging economic environment coming out of the pandemic plus supply chain disruption, all that, helping them to get connected to the resources and the supports they need to continue on and not only survive but thrive. So I'm just wondering if we're contemplating any additional supports or engagements or outreach as part of this throughout the summer and the fall.
Well, I think that we would just make sure that we were informing them of all of the opportunities that there are for engagement. So just like we would open it to any of the neighbors, we would open it to all of the businesses, and we would make sure that they were informed of what was happening. So, we can certainly direct outreach to them so that they know when the meetings are happening and what the timeline is for things and how they're able to make comment and communicate. We can also make sure that they understand that the team's always here, like we always have been, to provide some input or ask questions. So, I think it's unlikely that people will divert. If they do divert, I don't think they're going to divert away from Muskegon completely. I don't think people are going to suddenly just drive down US 31 and completely bypass the city of Muskegon. So I think that's very, very unlikely. I understand that businesses have concerns and we need to make sure that we're addressing those. We really just need to start this process and see what happens. I can imagine that if we're having some horrible negative impacts, that we could end the pilot early if we needed to do that. So I think it's just a matter of us staying engaged and talking to people.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Manager Mike Sal.
Sure.
And I share that sentiment or outlook that likely, if we move forward with this, that those folks wanting to come downtown or making downtown a destination, they're still going to make downtown a destination. That what we may see is some of those folks that are just traveling through are going to take a different route rather than traveling through our Shoreline Drive, find an alternative route, and they had no intention of stopping downtown anyhow, and so there should be minimal impact on our downtown businesses. But it's important that we do this study and analysis to help us make data-driven decisions.
Exactly.
So support. All right.
Right. I mean, and you can look at the La Jolla example that Leo and Jamie were discussing, where very little traffic change.
Yeah.
Before and after,
and
I've driven on La Jolla a number of times, and the businesses are all thriving.
Yeah, and potentially what we could see, even if there's some pain, a bit of pain this summer, that is a let's say it's an investment in long-term benefit and gain for our downtown businesses, because improving the waterfront connectivity to our downtown and helping our residents to gain access to our waterfront are just so incredibly important for our city. So, all right, any other questions or comments on this item right now, commissioners? No? All right. Thanks so much, Director Evans. Thank you, Mr. Pesh. Great work. Like the presentation. And that's going to be available in the morning, online. All right. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have the excise tax allocation. And we have Mike Franzik from our planning department with us, our planning manager. Welcome.
Good evening. I sent in the packet a proposed allocation to the MSEP and allocation to the general fund. Last year, the commission voted to approve 35% going to the MSEP, which was $39,200. This year, my recommendation, this was basically just based off my best guess on what we would need to fund these programs. So it went down to 20% of the funding, but it's still over double the funding into the MSEP. For the education piece, I felt like the commission felt through our last work sessions that this was probably enough money to get by for the next year. We also talked about some other things instead of just doing billboards, possibly having a speaker or someone to draft some educational materials that they could learn how to educate their kids better. I think we can do that for the same amount of money. Also expungement clinics. That went up by about $5,000. We're still working on our first expungement clinic, so we're not exactly sure. Maybe that could be bumped up a little more if we felt necessary. The one thing I'm seeing on my end is a need to increase the grants and loans. Last year we only had enough funding for 2 of them and I went right away. This year I'm sitting on 4 of them already. And the proposed allocation would fund 12 of them, and I don't believe we would probably see the need to go over that just from what I'm seeing out there. So these are my recommendations just based off of what we've done in the past year. So this is what we're presenting, and I'd be happy to discuss any of these options with you all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Before we go into questions or additional input, just want to add the additional context that when the commission decided to move into opting in, allowing recreational cannabis in the city of Muskegon, that we had intentionally created a Muskegon Marijuana Social Equity Program, and at that time we went back and forth about how to fund it, what, and welcoming not only our cannabis operators to be partners and contribute to it, but we'd also had a conversation about like what percentage, and there's a lot of back and forth on what percentage to commit of the excise tax dollars to that program, and there was also much conversation about whether to cap it, and the commission decided to move forward with 35% to go towards the program with no cap, and then had decided to allocate it, as you see here, with the 30% to grants and loans, 35% to expungement clinics, and 35% to educational purposes. So just to give you a little bit of background context for some of our newer commissioners that may not have been part of that social equity program conversation. So,
Thank you.
yes. Did I see a red pen, Commissioner Ramsey?
Of course you did.
Commissioner Ramsey.
My apologies. Mike, thank you for the great work around this. I want to highlight and talk about your increase of the grants and loans program. I think that's great. The expungement clinics, even though there's increase in all these dollar amounts, it's only because of the increase in what we're going to get back. I would really like to see us do some investigative work around these opportunities with the plan that we put into use in the first place, with the 35%, regardless of the amount that we're excising. Because I think that there's opportunity for us as a city to identify partnerships with community-based organizations and other collaborators to take on this work so that we don't have to own it. And then that this amount of money, $450,000, becomes more of a social equity plan than we had even intended. Because we're now sharing these dollars with other community-based organizations that are allowed to use them for their efforts to increase and yet to help to sustain their efforts. I think that if this $450,000 some odd dollars is going to be the norm moving forward, then that's a great opportunity for us. And I think that then we get the opportunity to look at these numbers like you've done so astutely today, which I again appreciate. But I would feel very comfortable with us keeping the original layout that was done by those that came before me, so that we can really see if there's a way to expand the social equity partnerships that we have that aren't just talking about marginalized persons' access to the marijuana and cannabis industry. But how do we really use these dollars to promote social equity across our community with multiple buffet of options, if you will, as we create RFPs or identify other partners to do things around expungement, to do things around education. I had a conversation the other day that, we have the opportunity now with these dollars to work with our local legal aid offices, and if they could tell us that for me to get expunged or for Commissioner St. Clair to have her record expunged is $125. And we know that we have $15,000 to give in one RFP, that we could support that many people from start to finish of the expungement application process. We could pay for that, right? Whatever the outcome is. But then we also offer additional dollars for those agencies doing the work behind the scenes to follow up with those individuals to make sure that if they are expunged, how do they have access to all of the new opportunities that come with that expungement? And how does that increase their capacity to better serve our community? So not only are we talking about the wonderful benefits for the person being expunged, but the capacity building within the organization doing so for our community that will then continue to help others. I have to leave for my 7:30, but I did want to make sure that I said thank you because this is amazing work. I just think that for the first year out the gate, when we have this kind of money, let's see what it can do and then make changes next year.
Okay. Yep. If we went with the same amount, 35% of that, and then took 35% of that, 35%,
Yep.
that would leave about 55,000 for education, and then 55,000 for expungement, and a little bit less for grants and loans.
And I think that if we're going to look at education, I know that we're going to do some meetings with public health and that you've been doing a lot of work and looking at those educational campaigns. Maybe we don't need a full 55, and if we don't, then we can move some of that stuff over, whatever you see fit, as directed by the commission. But I do think that we should be able to see what the opportunity is within those dollar amounts now and then adjust. So instead of just arbitrarily debating 20% versus 35%, let's see what's out there for the percentage that we have and then make some choices after that, right? Because then we have concrete things to nail it to. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
Great job, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, I am. Thank you for presenting this additional option, but thank you for recognizing the need in the grants and loans and wanting to put more resources towards that. I'm also of the mind that we could put more resources towards that. So while I would prefer to continue with our 35% allocation or 35% of excise tax revenues going to the social equity program, period, I'm more open to the adjustments within that 35% of, whether X percent should go to grants, loans, expungement clinics, or education. So I could see potentially bumping up the amount of dollars to grants and loans. And not just to, because I know we've talked in the past about potentially using those dollars to help people that had been harmed by prohibition have opportunities to get into the cannabis business and benefit from that. Not all those that have been ensnared by prohibition in the past want anything to do with the cannabis business today. And so I would like us to see using some of those grant dollars and resources to support entrepreneurs wanting to pursue non-cannabis businesses, particularly if there's an emphasis on operating within our cannabis district, because it'd be nice to get, some non-pot operations in our cannabis district,
We do have
which
that
could
as-
benefit
yeah.
benefit them as well. And I know we've included that into the program and encouraged our cannabis operators to help support non-cannabis businesses there as well. So
We do have one of the grant options is for people that have been affected by cannabis prohibition to get grants for non-cannabis industries.
Nice.
No one's taken us up on that yet, but I do have a couple people interested.
all right, excellent. Yes, let's get the word out and maybe get some more
Could you do me a
resources
favor,
to it
Mike?
as well.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead,
Could you,
Commissioner Ramsey.
Send just that part of the application to the commission so that we can begin to share that with our neighbors, because I think that that's a wonderful opportunity that we probably haven't highlighted as well as we should, so that people know that if they have been adversely affected but want nothing to do with cannabis, there's still an opportunity for growth there. Great job.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
All right. And then even mention education, if that might be too much for what we had used previously, which was kind of a messaging by and large. There's potential for using a portion of the education dollars for job trainings or job skills. Another thing I could think of is maybe, because this is in the realm of social equity, we are supporting the DEI director at MCC as well. And so some of these dollars from the education portion could go towards that position. If that's still the plan going forward in our budget. I haven't seen next year's fiscal year budget, but those resources could go to support that position, or maybe some of the work that we want that position to do for our community. Maybe that's tapping, was it Mr. James, I believe, is that director? Tapping him to help us with working with our Development Services Division on building out that Economic Equity Commission, getting that off the ground and up and running. Or maybe that's some resources to support the work that they're doing at MCC, maybe even reprising and bringing back the Institute on Racial Healing that had been housed with the community college and existed for a number of years. And so there's other ways we could potentially use those education dollars as well. Just throwing out some ideas and potential opportunities that we could do with that. With expungement clinics, I certainly would be interested in putting more dollars towards there. I know we allocated some dollars before, haven't used them. I'd helped with organize a expungement clinic last fall. We saw more than a couple hundred people show up to that. It was overwhelmed, and that was just a small fraction of the number of people in our community that need expungement services. So I certainly would like to see us have robust capacity and resources available for expungement clinics and get a program off the ground. Doesn't necessarily have to be a program that we are running. We could be done with a partnering agency. But I really like the idea, if we have the resources, of making expungement free for our city residents, or at the very least free for those that had been ensnared by cannabis prohibition in the past. And when I say by free, I mean not only having legal counsel or an attorney helping them complete the paperwork, but covering the fingerprint cost, covering the background check cost, covering the filing fee with the state. I think that's important. It's just my personal preference I'm sharing. And that helping them make sure they complete the process, get that court date, and then they're getting expunged. I think that is incredibly important for our residents who have those things hanging over their heads and inhibiting them from pursuing not only job opportunities but housing opportunities. I also see it as an economic development tool that perhaps we can list some of our industrialists here with partnering and adding more resources to it. But all right, enough said for me. Commissioners, I went on and on. Commissioners, do you have any additional comments or questions on this item? Commissioner Hood.
No additional comments or questions. I just agree with what you were saying about where some of that money should go to. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood.
I also agree.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair.
Yes, I concur with just about everything that was said, and good job, Director Franzik. With the grants and loans portion of it, I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that's looking to get started, and they can't due to the lack of resources of funding. I think that's capped off at 65%. I mean, we got a larger portion in this year, which is great, and I think that's going to continue as the industry, gets on that upward climb for businesses. Definitely a need for expungement. A lot of them can't, get into the business due to, records and the prohibition of marijuana. And when they were arrested and trying to find their way to be able to clear their records. So I think we're on the right track, and thank you for your guidance and your professionalism, Director Franzik. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German.
And expertise as well, yeah.
Commissioner Gorman, do you have any comments or questions at this time? All right. Commissioner Hood.
One last thing. On your grants and loans, you said we had, did you say it was 2 this year?
We only had enough money to fund 2 last year, so we did right away.
Okay, and
we got a couple on the waiting list now.
And those grants are how much?
$5,000 a piece.
$5,000
Yeah.
$5,000 a piece, and they will continue to be $5,000 a piece?
Yes.
Or will that go up?
We could. I mean, if there was more funding, we could bump it up to 10. But I think 5,000 seems like. I mean, it's hard to tell what exactly is going to get somebody over the hump.
Mm-hmm.
I think this $5,000 is a pretty good start, especially when it starts to getting back into education or paying for architecture fees for your business plans, things like that. We've done that on a couple ones. $5,000 is also the application fee locally for a marijuana application, so it's a good number just to waive that application fee.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hood. All right, Director Franzik, how do you anticipate proceeding? This isn't on our agenda tomorrow for any kind of up and down vote. Is something you're just going to incorporate into the fiscal budget, or
yeah, I was going to ask
plan on bringing back to us, or
how we want to proceed.
What's the outlook?
Maybe it would be appropriate if I came back on the first meeting in June, just to approve the social equity program moving forward.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it'll change much. Maybe we don't even need to do that if it doesn't change, if it's still 35% and the same numbers. But perhaps we want to bump that grants and loans up to 35 and change the other ones down to 30 or 40, 30, 30, something like that.
Okay.
I think it sounds like it would make everybody up here kind of happy if we did something like that. So
all right.
Maybe I just adjust those numbers and leave the 35% to the MSEP. And then we'll
Yep,
bring that
and
back
then
in June for an
adjust
official vote.
Sub-allocations. Yep.
Yes, or yeah, I could get that in the next meeting actually in May.
Okay.
So we could do that.
All right, so then maybe on our May 24th agenda. All right. Excellent. Do you have any questions for us, or is there anything that you're still looking for any kind of guidance or input from us on this?
I guess moving forward, we'll have a lot more money to play with education-wise, so please send me your ideas on how you would like me to proceed on that. Expungement clinics, I think we can come up with how to spend that once we get that first one down and realize how we need to spend that funding. And grants and loans, I don't think we'll have a problem spending that. So really, if you have any creative ways on how to educate people on this and how to use this new funding, that would be appreciated.
All right, excellent. And also at the end of the fiscal year, if we do have some dollars left in one category, at the time we could say let's move it to another category where it can be deployed and
Sure.
best used. So, all right, thanks so much for your work on this.
All right, thank you.
Take care. All right, next up, we have the third quarter fiscal year reforecast. Welcome, Director Ken Grant.
Is this working? Okay. I just
Is this where you're gonna scold us? Like, come on, give me more money for my general fund.
Yeah. I'm always asking for money. I just wanted to go over some of the highlights for the general fund. I gave you the packet and I gave you my highlights. I just wanted to go through the highlights. For the third quarter, we've seen a modest increase in our property taxes and our property tax sanitation collections. So we bumped that up a little bit, like $200,000 this year. One thing that we've seen a decrease in is our inspections, our building, electricity, heating, permits are down about 72,000 this year. I don't know what it is. It just could be a timing, it could be COVID, it could be numerous things, but we notice that it's a downward trend. The one thing you have been noticing is the marijuana excise tax. We got a nice bump of revenue from that. Mike was trying to spend it all, but I think we have some plans on what we're going to do with some of that money in our next budget year. We want to do some things to bring more jobs into some of the things that you guys ask for. One of the areas that we've seen a big increase is miscellaneous sundry. We got a one-time increase, a refund from some of our MERS pensioner people who left the city before early, and some of the contributions go back to us. So we kind of got that money back when people leave before they're vesting. We get to keep our portion. So we did see an increase of that. One thing you will see in our 101, I say 4904 fund, you will see a big increase in that. That's pretty much ARPA funds coming into the general fund from the ARPA, from the state grants fund. So we're going to use that money for primarily things that you guys have used, that we have out, you guys already pre-approved. So we're going to use that. Some of our expenses that we noticed that had the police department. Normally the police department is one of our saving graces because they're never fully staffed. But this year, I don't know, because we had a large number of retirements, we had a lot of people cashing out sick and vacation time. We noticed that the police budget has gone up significantly, about $400,000. So we're asking for an increase in the budget for the police department. Let's see what else. Another thing that you guys approved, I think it was January, February, you guys approved that we are going to transfer $2.6 million from the general fund to the convention center for the overages and the costs that were not covered by the bonds. So we're going to use that. Another area that we actually saved money was for the central dispatch capital project where we got bond from. A lot of the money got spent the previous year, so we just lowering that number. We used all the money, but used most of it in the last fiscal year. So that's why that is reflected as a downward trend because we spent the money earlier. Let me see what else. Overall, the general fund through the third quarter has a surplus of $780,000, and the reason we have that is because we budgeted for a fire truck to be spent, and we're going to move that to next fiscal year. I think the cost of that fire truck is about $760,000. So we're just moving it. The fire truck is not going to be ready this fiscal year, so we're moving it to the next fiscal year. The money still has to be spent. It's just going to be spent earlier next year instead of the end of this year. So overall, right now we do have a small surplus, but we still have 2 or 3 more months to go, and we still have a lot of things to spend money on. Mercy Health Arena. Okay. Any questions on general?
Yeah, just to jump in right there, piggyback off that. Looks like we're going to be, like you said, $780,000 surplus for our general fund, and we moved that $10 million ARPA for the what was it called?
Standard
allowance.
Yes.
So we exercised our standard allowance to move that $10 million. I was just wondering, this kind of harkens back to, my question previously or inquiry previously. Is it at all sensible to withhold or hold back, let's say $780,000 or some dollar amount close to that, hold that back in the grant fund of that 10 million, since we have a surplus, in order to kind of target break even, so that then that $780,000 could be transferred next fiscal year, into our general fund to maybe plug any holes that pop up, or we know we're going to have to buy that fire truck. So I'm just curious.
We are kind of smoothing that out. We're not getting all that $10 million into this fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
We're only going to probably get like $5 million into this fiscal year, and the rest is going to be next fiscal year. So we're not putting all that standard allowance in this fiscal year.
Okay.
So I think right now we're at 3.9, and probably by the end of the year it'll be about 5.4. But we're going to spend some of the money that you guys are starting already approved for ARPA. So it's going to wash itself out.
All right.
So that 780,000 is just a snapshot of where we're at on March 31st. So that doesn't mean we're going to have that at the end of the year.
Now, this is reflecting our anticipated transfers. We generally have a number of transfers at the end of the fiscal year to different funds.
Yep, I updated that. I have that updated too, and that's on. Let me see what page.
Oh yeah, that.
It's at the end of the general fund. You will see
general fund.
The biggest one is the transfer from the general fund to the to the convention center.
Yeah.
The 2.6.
Yeah. Okay.
But everything else is pretty much static. It hasn't changed that much.
Okay.
Any other questions about the general fund before I leave that fund? Because that's the biggest fund.
No. All right.
Okay. We noticed that Mercy Arena is actually producing some nice revenue for once. We may not have to transfer that much from the general fund this year. That's a good thing, but we still are going to have to transfer. And one of the things that we can't really account for, because you guys agreed to front the build out of Carlisle's. And so once they're open, they're going to give us that $650,000 back. Hopefully we could get that money before the end of this fiscal year, and I think we're on schedule for that. So we're working on getting the liquor license and all that stuff and the final inspection done. So once the final inspection is done with Carlisle's, they're going to reimburse us all the money that we spent for the build out. So that's a good thing. So it's a wash right now. We have it as expense, but when they give us the money, we're going to record that as a revenue. So the Mercy Health Arena, we have Jake LeMay. He's been new. He's very aggressive. He wants to generate more revenue down there. He's always itching and coming up with ideas of ways to generate revenue. And I'm unleash the pit bull and let him do it because I'm tired of kind of funding that arena from our general fund. So the better he is generating revenue, the better it'll help the general fund, and it will just, I think it's turning around. We're seeing the Mercy Arena actually increase in revenue in certain areas, and I think that's what Rat Daz and Carlisle's that's going to help us generate more revenue. Let me see.
Yeah, it took a while, but our investments are.
Yes, we're starting to see it.
Starting to pay off and help get that facility to be more solvent.
And one of the things I'm going to the water and sewer fund, and one of the things that I know you're always on me about is our wastewater treatment. We lowered that amount down to $5 million. At one point it was over $6 million, and we're noticing that since our treatment charges are going down, and we're reflecting that in the third quarter. And I think Leo's we're going to have some type of smoothing program with the county that we're going to pay a certain amount over the next 3 years. 3 years. So it's going to be more stable. So we're going to know how to budget for the treatment costs instead of going up and down. We'll have a better smoothing way to generate those. For those expenses. Let me see what else. That's about it. We're seeing that. For some reason, water and sewer maintenance, we see a increase in salaries And supplies, I don't know what's behind that, but it just could be normal treatment or regular costs. I don't know, but it's just a 130,000 more than it has been in the last year. We also had to lower our water wholesale water revenue projections by 400,000. I don't know if it's just timing. It's just I don't know where people are using. Our wholesale users are using less water, so we just had to reduce that revenue by 400,000. And hopefully, it's a drier summer. We'll generate more revenue as we sell more water to our wholesale customers. Other than that, if you have any questions about the third quarter reforecast, let me know. Jessica, my assistant, has been very helpful, and all the departments head and division heads have been helpful with getting this information to me, so we could present a budget to you guys. And we're working on the fourth quarter budget and the next budget for next year.
Excellent. Yeah, y'all have been busy.
Yes.
We're simultaneously working on our next fiscal year budget and doing this third quarter.
Yep, and with the ARPA things, and like I said, we're working on that. So it's just it's a lot of things going on in finance.
Well, much appreciated for your hard work on all of those
Yep.
items. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on any of the other funds in the reforecast? No? Oh, Vice Mayor German.
Just a comment to Director Grant. Always, appreciate your expertise and what you and your team do in the finance department to keep us the city budget sustained. So I just want to say excellent work.
All right, thank you. It's a lot of work sometimes.
Yeah,
You're looking at all these budgets. I'm like pulling my hair out the little I have, but it's a challenge and it's enjoyable. Once it comes together, it's kind of satisfying.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate
if you have any questions,
Grant.
always feel free to contact me by email or call me prior to the meeting or anytime. I will hopefully or run reports for you guys. Anything you guys need, I'm always there for you guys, and my department is too. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And this is under new business tomorrow, so if any questions pop up between now and then, you will have an opportunity to ask them at that time or reach out to them beforehand. So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So next up, we have public comment. We have a couple folks that have completed sheets to speak. First up, we've got Morning Bear from the Nelson neighborhood. Yeah. Welcome, Morning. Yeah. We don't ask you to divulge your address. You can keep that private. I'm not going to share it. We do have it for our records, though. But just your name, and you're speaking on the Shoreline Drive road diet.
Yeah, I'm not like against it, but I am in a way. And the reason being is the traffic on Muskegon Avenue now in 2015, when you took it to smaller, it was supposed to slow down traffic. It's awful. I'm a bike rider. Muskegon Avenue is the most dangerous street to ride your bike on in almost the entire city of Muskegon except for Shoreline Drive. So I'm not sure this is safe. So if you guys are really going to pay attention and put out things and make sure that, the traffic isn't going to double up, because right now when the cars stop at Seaway Drive, they race to the next stop sign all day, all night. I have had house guests lose their side mirrors from all the traffic. Roxanne down here on Webster Avenue has, since the roads have been made smaller, who had to leave, also has had nothing but racing from stop sign to stop sign. So our big fear is that this is going to create more traffic for us, more noise. We've already been through enough over the last couple of years. Let's be honest. That 2-block radius, we have been through a lot. And we don't deserve to go through any more. We're just as important as the people that want to ride bikes downtown or on Shoreline or anywhere else. We matter as much. And for years, we have tried to get the crosswalk that goes from, 7th over Shoreline lengthened. Because even when I'm riding my bike, it's not long enough to get across. So why have we never done that? I mean, we're talking about making it better, but we've never even bothered. And even when the guy from MDOT tried to get it the city would not agree to it. So maybe we need to get Leo and a few other people, go ahead and do your road diet, but in the meantime, why aren't we doing measures now that could be safer for people on bicycles and walking? Am I making sense? So anyway, I don't like the road diet. I fear noise. But I do appreciate you making her job better. I really do. They worked you to death. It's about time. So maybe you can get the police officers to start paying better attention to our street. Because it's dangerous. I alley hop on my bike because it's not safe to ride on Muskegon Avenue or Webster. So I don't see why you spend all that money to make it a residential street when we can't even ride our bikes on it because it's not safe, and now you're gonna funnel more traffic down on top of it. Not cool. I'm done.
Thank you, Morning Bear.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. Take care. All right, we have Aaron Bodbill Mast joining us from the Beechwood Bluffton neighborhood. Welcome. Also speaking on the same subject.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. I'm here also on behalf of the Muskegon County Bicycle Coalition. We sent an email earlier with, and I have copies for those that like it, the resolution we passed in support of this road diet concept. And first I'll say I was hurt when Jamie said way back in 1997. Man, I do feel, after 2 bouts of cancer, I do feel quite a bit older, but not that old as way back. But and I think and some of those concerns I understand with the Nelson neighborhood. And I think one of the things when talking to experts, we reached out to national experts about this thing. A missing piece of kind of this pilot project is doing the study after. I think we should start the visioning now about what could that space be used for and what other traffic calming measures are needed. What's not, and Webster and Muskegon, I agree, is not enough. I live on a street where it's surprisingly busy, surprisingly fast. The people will speed to a dead end to turn around where I live, and I'm in the middle of a traffic experience, but I thank God that you did it. And I'm very happy about it over on Beach Street. So let's do more. I'm not in this because I don't really, even though I'm in the coalition, I don't ride my bike that much. I'm on the coalition because I believe that's by making it better for pedestrian bikes, we make a better community. And part of that, and we also make a better world. It's also a matter of faith for me. As Pope Francis said in Laudato Si, by heeding the cry of the earth, we heed the cry of the poor. And this is like at Jackson neighborhoods that Jackson Health Study shows. This divides people from nature. It divides people, communities. It divides, and we got to make it work for everyone, and we got to start visioning that. But one thing I will mention that you should really consider as part of the pilot is somehow, in a limited sense, I know Leo said that MDOT will be a barrier. That space that you do close, we have to activate it. So people have to see how it can start being used by people, and it's not just bikes. It could be families, it can be children, it can be people with mobility issues, and then you can also start visiting. Could you, like at by Marquette, can you turn half of that space into affordable housing and address our housing issues? So there's so that's that. A lot of that's in the resolution. But the thing about if you don't activate the space, people can't see. They'll see empty road, and we have to find a way to work with them not to get some kind of activation and start some visioning of like what could we do there. I know if you were in Grand Haven and you were proposing a 5-lane road on Harbor Drive, they would be out for you. And, you know, nobody would build this today if you were starting from scratch in this city. Who would want to divide their city from the lakeshore like this? So let's try to find the best way to fix that instead of, you know, and work together to do that as a whole community. So, but again, and if anybody...
You can wrap up your thought.
Well, and I just want to say for any commissioners or any people that have concerns or questions and want to talk it over, you know, I'm willing to do coffee or beer anytime. So, and I'm sure anybody from the coalition would be willing to do that. We'd love to talk it over because this, you know, in Detroit, why they need plans at 375, they've got suddenly $50 million in real estate they have to dispose of because they're reconfiguring that from Ford Field to the border. So you get, that's why you want to start the visioning now, because what if you do get, you know, dispose of that land, what can it become?
Okay. Thank you for joining us tonight and giving your remarks, and appreciate the MCBC's ongoing engagement with the city and your advocacy. All right. Next up, we've got Mr. Mike Gallivan joining us from the Nelson neighborhood, speaking on the same topic. Welcome. Oh, do you need the microphone's up.
I don't think it's, yeah.
Oh,
It's not a
well, it's not a no. No.
No.
If you have questions, we can take note of them and he can follow up with you. But right now is not a Q&A time.
Thank you. Is this thing working?
You got to use that
Hello?
microphone.
I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to hear our opinions. First of all, I'm very disappointed that the City of Muskegon Planning Department is presenting this plan and asking the City Commission to vote on it within 24 hours. I don't think that's fair to residents, especially ones that are directly impacted. It doesn't give us time to analyze and understand the effects of the proposed road diet as it impacts our streets. Sorry, I have residential property on Muskegon and commercial property on Webster. Why is there a rush on this study? If permanent changes to Shoreline Drive cannot be addressed in a number of years, then why rush the traffic study vote? Unless the planning department is scared of giving residents time to rebut their study. So my position is that we should put the brakes on the vote. You should have a diet that blocks Webster's on-ramp and on-ramp to Muskegon so that you get a fair measurement of Shoreline Drive. I also want to know, since the planning department is data-driven and they're engineers, that they have numbers that they're expecting, and I'd like to know if they're wrong by more than X percent, if there's a cut bait mechanism so that they stop the road diet if they're dead wrong. I do disagree with the opinion that backed up traffic will not seek side roads. If traffic backs up to the Webster overpass, traffic will take Muskegon Avenue. Locals will take Muskegon Avenue. Tourists will take Southern and find their way through. I'm 100% behind data-driven decision-making, but this is not the premise of this planning department's proposal is rigged to produce an intended outcome. This is not a best practices study. This is a single focus study on a single outcome. It's not a very agile way to perform a study, and it's going to be a waste of taxpayers' money because the result is a yes/no answer. It's not a slate of viable options. It's also not future-looking. Because if development downtown is successful, you have a development proposed on Terrace and Shoreline. You have one proposed where the Social Security building is. You have another one proposed down by Furcano's. What kind of traffic are those developments going to generate? And if you shave this road down to 2 lanes, what happens in the future when all those people show up with cars? I know that they've probably done studies to figure out if these developments happen, how much traffic will be generated. Has that been taken into account with the desire to do this road diet? Discussion of pedestrian fatalities is misleading to the public. How many of those fatalities were on Shoreline Drive specifically? And also, I lived in San Diego. I lived in La Jolla, and I lived on Mission Beach, and I drove La Jolla Boulevard every day. It's a false equivalency because that is not a state highway. It is not a freeway. It's not a divided highway. And La Jolla is one of the richest zip codes in America. So businesses are always going to be thriving there, whether it's 5 lanes or 2 lanes. What year is the baseline historical traffic data from Webster and Muskegon from? What year is that from? And can that data from that date be used and be applicable to this study? Like Morning mentioned, Webster and Muskegon were recently changed to residential roads. She told me they used to have multiple lanes and stoplights the whole way down on both sides. You spent a significant amount of taxpayer money reverting those streets back to residential use, and now you're going to redirect partial traffic from Business 31 down those roads. Discussion of redlining is disingenuous because the road diet has no connection to social equity, social justice, or correcting historical wrongs. And the outcome of this traffic study is intended to benefit future development and future residents, not existing residents, and minority residents affected by redlining. My solution would be to add a series of traffic circles at the Western and Shoreline at both ends of downtown with an express lane for business traffic going up Business 31 and local lanes for traffic that want to come into downtown. And of course, if you look at Boulder, Colorado, they do have highways that go straight through their city. And what they use are hybrid crosswalks with speed bumps to slow down traffic and allow for pedestrians to have safe crossings across the state highway. So there are options. I appreciate the extra time, but I would urge you to vote later, give the residents time to digest this plan, and to consider blocking Webster and Muskegon from the plan so that we don't get the extra traffic and that you get an accurate reading of traffic on Shoreline Drive. And also, August through October is cherry picking. Do the summer with all of the events, and why would you measure anything other than peak volume? What's the point of measuring low volume? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallivan. Director Evans is an exceedingly accessible person, and he may be willing to, if he doesn't have another engagement or have to run, he may be willing to stick around after the meeting and speak to you one-on-one. You're also welcome to submit your list of questions to him by leo.evans@shorelinecity.com. You can also submit it to the entire commission, including your suggestions for alternatives. I always welcome ideas and so that we can thoroughly explore what's the best way forward. So appreciate you being here tonight. Appreciate your questions and your comments on this subject. All right. Anyone else from the public wish to give remarks on the same item or anything else? No. All right. Well, can you hold your questions after the meeting? This isn't a question time. All right. Thank you, Morning. All right. Before we adjourn, commissioners, do you happen to have any questions on anything else on our agenda tomorrow night that you might want to raise right now? No? All right. Then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All right. We heard a motion to adjourn by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Vice Mayor German. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. We are adjourned.